Welcome to Release Readiness Live. I'm Elna Miller, your community moderator, and I'm going to be here with you all week as we talk about some of the great new features in the Winter 19 release. Today, we're going to be talking about Lightning platform features, so really there's something for everyone today. So thank you for joining us. What I love about Release Readiness Live is that no matter what type of Trailblazer you are, whether this is your first Salesforce release or your 20th, you're in for a treat. Our product managers are right here in the studio, and they're going to give some live demos and take some of your questions on the air. And speaking of questions, I'm very excited to welcome back our original community rock star, Sam Acuff, who's going to tell us how the questions work. Sam?
Well, thank you, Elna. I am so excited to be back in the saddle again. It's very fun to be in the studio. What's really important here is that you know how to ask questions, because we do have a policy of no question left behind. It's very simple. Use the Trailblazer community, specifically use the Release Readiness Trailblazer community group, and make sure that you use the hashtag Salesforce Live. That way we can locate your questions right away. I'll be monitoring for questions all throughout the session, so please make sure you post. Now, if you can't access the community, you can use Twitter. Please again use the hashtag Salesforce Live, and I'll be able to locate those. So ask away. That's your hashtag, and Elna, back to you.
Great. Thank you, Sam. Now, we are recording this broadcast, and we're recording all week, so you'll be able to watch it back anytime. And we may be talking about some roadmap today, so therefore, we may be making some forward-looking statements. And if we do, please make your purchasing decisions based on currently available functionality. And now, let's meet our product managers, starting with Joe.
Hey everybody,
Welcome.
I'm Joe Ryan. I'm a product manager on the Lightning platform team. I've been at Salesforce for about 6.5 years, and I'm really excited to talk to you about new things in Winter 19 today.
And I'm Edelstein. I'll be showing you a little bit of the new Flow Builder and a bunch of the new exciting Flow screen components and actions that are available.
And I'm John Vogt. I've been at Salesforce since 2010, and today I'll be talking about Platform DX, development tooling, and some new admin tools that you'll love.
All right, so let's get started with navigation, Joe. And I know there's some Flownatics out there, so stay tuned for Alex's section. All right,
awesome.
Joe.
This is going to be a great session. Okay, so I'm really excited to be here today and talk to you guys about this brand new feature we're releasing in winter called density setting and the new compact view that we have. So long story short, we love Lightning. Lightning's been out in the market for over 3 years now. We've listened to all of your feedback about using Lightning, about the Lightning UI. And we had some room for improvements in terms of how we use space and how we do padding and how we do text colors and sizes. And so we wanted to basically respond to all of your feedback and show you the progress we've made by releasing a new view that gives you a lot more utility with looking at data in Lightning. And so the goal that we had for this project was really to make sure that when you look at data in Lightning, you're able to see just as much information on the screen as you might have been used to in Salesforce Classic. So we made that a key goal. We also made it a goal to make sure that we tightened up all of our components, all the spacing, padding around the screen, to give you the tightest view possible when you use Lightning. And of course, this is a personal preference. So there are going to be users who might prefer the comfy view that we've had up until now, or ones that might prefer the new compact view. And so we made this a user choice, where each person can choose what works for them using Lightning. So if you take a look here, we're kind of comparing the screenshot, the classic view of a record with comfy and with compact. Now, comfy, like I mentioned, is the view that you've had in Lightning up until now, and compact is a new view that you have an option to use starting in winter. And if you take a look here, we've kind of drawn an orange line across the bottom. That's showing you what we call the cut line or fold line on a typical, MacBook Air type resolution, 1440 by 900, and it shows you the point at which you got to start scrolling down to see more information. So if you take a look at the screenshot, what you'll probably notice here is that you probably can't see it exactly, but we've got a field here called tracking number in Classic. And if you look across, we're pretty much there at the same spot in Compact. So we tried really hard that when you look at a record, you're looking at the record details in the wide region, you're going to see the same number of fields or more above the fold before you scroll. We also heard lots of feedback from you about the colors we use for fonts. And I agree with you, there was a little bit too much gray on white, and it was kind of hard to read. So we actually went back with our UX team. We darkened a number of our colors in the palette we use, a lot closer to black. So what you're going to see in winter across both views, both comfy and compact, you're going to see a lot of the text colors a lot closer to black. We actually are now exceeding a pretty critical standard for accessibility called WCAG 2.0 AAA, or AA rather. So you're going to see a lot more contrast there. In general, I mean, obviously you can customize how you lay out records and what you put on the screen with App Builder, but in general, we're seeing about 30% more information on the screen in compact mode. And like I mentioned before, it is a user preference. You as the admin can set an org default. So for example, if you look at this and you love it, and you decide that for your org it makes sense to have the default be compact view for users, for example, when you start enabling more people for Lightning, then you can go and set compact as a default. But once a user makes their personal choice of what view works for them, that is the final decision for them. And of course, we love telling our users about great features, and so this is a pretty important one that's global, and we built some great onboarding into Winter. You're only going to see it once, and the way this works is whenever a user goes to a record page for the first time in Winter, they're going to see a little pop-up in the bottom right, and it tells them about the new feature. It tells them they have a choice as to what view they want to use, and the Show Me How button, actually it's pretty cool. When you click it, it opens the user menu where these settings are, and it points them, it actually highlights it in yellow, it points them to where they can change the settings. So, of course, you probably want to check out Compact. I'll be very curious to see, where users land on their preferences, but my gut is a lot of people on Compact. But that's how we're making sure people know about this great new option they have in Winter. And of course, I would be remiss to say that we're done, right? We're not done. So we got started, we did a lot of progress in Winter. We are committed to continuing to enhance the new compact view. And so as you probably can imagine, we have dozens and dozens, maybe even hundreds of components that we've built at Salesforce the past 3 years for Lightning. And not everything has been addressed yet. So for example, the related record component that I've highlighted here in orange is a common component people use in the narrow regions of layouts. And you'll notice here I'm showing you a screenshot of the new compact view. So you're seeing that the record details section in the middle does have left-aligned labels, but the related record component to the left of it does not. So part of this was us taking a look at and prioritizing all the out-of-the-box components and trying to put our effort into those first. But also we had to do a lot of debate around, how do we make use of minimal space? And so in the narrow regions of layout, you have less width to work with. And so we thought that if we were to do a 2-column layout in here and do left-aligned labels, you're going to see a lot more line wrapping with text fields and values. We didn't want to push things off the page and make it even taller. So we had to kind of do a balancing act here on doing the right thing for you. But of course, there's different opinions about how to do this the right way. And so please give us your feedback in the community. We're passing that to all the different product management teams to prioritize the work that you want to see in Compact View. Let's talk about lists for a second. So I'm really excited about this feature. I love lists. I use them all the time in Lightning. Wouldn't it have been great if we had search built in from day one? Of course, but now we have it. And on any list view that you have in Lightning, you can now do search, and I'm going to demo that to you in 1 second. Some also good news for Winter. We now have sharing of lists with groups. That's been a gap with Classic for a while, so we're happy to tell you that we've now filled that gap, and you can do that functionality inside of Lightning. And as a sneak peek towards spring, of course, safe harbor, we're really excited to be working on pinned list views right now. So we've heard a lot of feedback from you that the recently viewed list is not your favorite list to land on, and maybe you'd like a different list per object. And so we are currently hard at work building that functionality so that you'll be able to pin whatever list you like on an object and have that load by default when you go there. So let's jump into a demo real quick. So starting off with the density settings feature. As admins, you do have some control for the org default. So what I'm showing you here in setup is a screen under density settings you can get to. And it's pretty simple. We just basically let you pick what the org default is, comfy or compact. For existing orgs, we're not moving your cheese, don't worry. So you will stay on comfy as the default, which has been what you've been on since the start of Lightning. But if you want to move your org over to compact, you can just easily click on it and set it as the org default. And like I mentioned, what that's going to do, it's not going to reset user preferences, but it's going to be kind of an ongoing setting where anybody new that you add to your Lightning org will start out in compact mode if you do that. Okay, and I'm showing you here's an account record and compact view. So again, the way you control this as an end user is you go open your user menu, and if you look up here, I've got some settings here for whatever view. I will give you guys kind of a sneak peek that we are actually playing around with a third view internally right now, and we'll see how employees like that. But if you look out in the industry, you do see kind of 3 levels. You see comfy, cozy, and compact. Cozy being kind of a middle blend of the two. So we'd love your feedback. If you feel like these 2 views are perfect and you love it and we're done, that's great to hear. If you feel like you'd like kind of a middle view where it's still isn't super tight, but maybe the labels are on the left, let us know the variations that you think are really important, and we'll look at doing more views that way. But personally, I love it. It feels a lot like Classic in the sense that we have left align labels. So if you're used to that, you have that now in Lightning, and you're seeing more information on the screen. Okay, jumping over to a list. And in the meantime, before we have pinned lists available, I want to just reiterate the workaround that we do have. If you miss that functionality or want it, you can always favorite things in Lightning and jump to them with 2 clicks. And so I'll just show you here. I did put this list that I'm showing you, partner opportunities, as a favorite. So it's always 2 clicks away, and you can always do that as a way to load lists quickly. You can also customize or personalize your nav bar. And you'll see here in this app that I'm in, I've actually added the list view as a tab as well. So you have a couple different ways in Lightning that you've had for a while to be able to put things like lists or records front and center and have them load quickly. So here I am looking at my list view, and boy, there's a lot of things in this list. And so let's try to search it and kind of narrow this down. Now, what's cool about this feature, you see here we have the new search box, search this list. And if I click in here, it's going to tell you which columns it might not be able to search. So for the most part, we're searching every single field on the object, not just things in the list view, but every single field on the object, with the exception of lookups and pick lists. Those right now are not indexed. We can't search them. There's an exception to that, and that is on opportunities and on contacts. The account name lookup is indexed. It is searchable. I'm actually going to do that right now. And so we're looking at this list, and we're looking at the account name column, and let's go ahead and type in Harmon, and let's narrow this down. So I'll type in Harmon, I'll hit enter, and you'll see that very quickly the list has now filtered itself down to just those matching rows. And what's really cool about this, I can keep adding more qualifiers to this. So if you look over here at our results set, right, like there is one for 40K, one opportunity. And what if I wanted to find that one? I could just do space 40K and hit enter, and I found that. So it's pretty flexible in how you can keep searching. I will mention that we do have a limit of up to 2,000 rows you can search. So if your list view has more than 2,000 rows, so sorry you can't search beyond that right now, but hopefully you don't have that many rows in your list, and you can fully search what's inside of it. So really exciting stuff there with lists, and more on the way in upcoming releases. So I'm going to flip back over here to some slides. Okay. We'll just give this 1 second to load. All right. Another cool thing we did in winter, hopefully you've been liking the Personalize My Nav feature in Standard Nav for a while now, where you can actually, like I just mentioned, put whatever tabs you want in your nav bar. We brought the same functionality in winter to console apps. So if you love console, I think console is amazing. It's very, very good for productivity. What you'll see now, if you look in the vertical drop-down list where all your tabs are in console, is a new link to edit. And if you click on that, you'll get the familiar screen that you've seen from us in Standard Nav, where you can reorder the tabs, you can rename certain tabs, you can click the Add More button, and you can add more of any tabs you want. So all that same functionality that you're used to from Standard Nav is now available to you in Console Nav to really kind of personalize your apps there. Another really cool thing on the customization side, like personally, App Builder is amazing. It's one of the best things about Lightning. You can really make any page look the way you want without having to write any code. Just drag and drop things around in App Builder. And one of the really powerful things about how this works is you have dynamic component visibility. We've had this for a while now. We keep making it more and more awesome in the sense of what it can do as far as rules. So some new rules we've added support for in winter are being able to use permissions, both standard and custom, to control visibility. So if you might create like a custom layout, say for record home, put a bunch of components on it, the really powerful thing about dynamic visibility is that you can have components show or hide themselves based on data on the page, based on rules that you define for how they should be visible. And so now you can say, okay, only show this component to people with these permissions. So you can really slice and dice this now, really kind of make it what you want with how these things display. So I'm going to pivot now and talk a little bit about how we're helping you drive adoption to Lightning in your org and helping your users onboard faster. So one of the really cool things, and a lot of these things have kind of come out between releases, so these are pretty recent things in production now as of end of August. But we have a new onboarding welcome mat that users will see. So when you add new people to your org in Lightning and they land for the first time they log in, we now have a general welcome mat they're going to see when they log in. And the goal here is to give them kind of quick orientation, help them figure out how to navigate, get around, answer key questions they might have about Lightning basics. And of course, once they close this, they can always get back to it from the help menu. But the really powerful thing for you admins here is that we made it customizable for you. So if you go into setup and you go under onboarding and assistance, you'll see here, sorry, the screenshot's a little bit hard to see, but you have a way that you can actually put in a custom URL. And if you do that, like for example, say that you've hosted your own kind of help page in your company somewhere. You can put in a link to that, and when the welcome mat comes up, rather than showing the content that I'm showing here with my mouse, it will be your website loaded inside this welcome mat. So it's a really cool way for you to have your own kind of global onboarding content, whether it's links to PDFs or whatever works for you. You can totally customize that now in Lightning. In terms of feedback, so as you're working through migrating people over to Lightning, you might have people in your org still switching back to Classic. We've heard a lot of feedback of, wouldn't it be nice to know what they're going back to Classic for? And some of this could be about maybe more education, more training for users. Some could be feedback for you as the admin about things to tweak in the layouts or things that they want to use that aren't there right now. This gives you a way that you can now turn on a feedback form. And by the way, it's out now. You can turn it on as of today. And you can either use our default question, or you can write your own custom question. And you can choose how often people see this. And the goal is to collect feedback, have it be posted into a public chatter group where you can engage with people and answer their questions, and it becomes a community effort as well. And so this feature actually came out of how we at Salesforce internally managed our own migration of employees to Lightning a couple years ago. We worked with our IT department. They said to us, we really want to know, what the questions are, what the concerns are, and how we can help kind of onboard people faster. And so we built them an internal tool that did this feedback form, and it was a smashing success for us, and it really created a fun community around this as well, in the sense that we've got a pretty busy admin team internally in our own org, and I'm sure you guys are very busy in your jobs. And what we found is that we got our early Lightning adopter employees to get really excited about helping their colleagues. And they were actually going into this chatter group and they were answering questions proactively, helping out the admins. And so it became a great kind of best practice. We wanted to give you guys the same tools that you can use in your org. So if you go into the same onboarding assistant setup page we have for you in Lightning, you'll see a section to turn this form on. It's off by default. You can turn it on. You can choose to write your own custom question. I'll make a note about that. So our built-in question is pretty generic, but it has been translated into all supported UI languages. Just a note for you, if you do write your own custom question, we show it to people exactly as you've written. We don't have the power to auto-translate that. So if you're in a global company with different people with different locales and languages, just be aware that if you write your custom question in English, that's how it's going to be shown to every employee in your org. And of course, the chatter group you pick, it must be public. The reason for that is we didn't feel like doing kind of anonymous or private feedback was the best way to handle this. And the way we're doing the feedback now is when the user gives their feedback on Switch, it is posted as a chatter post from that user into the group. And a private group model wouldn't work well with that. So we felt that was the best way to do it. If you do pick a group for this that's public and then later on you go behind the scenes and change it to a private group, the form will turn itself off. Just be aware of that. And last up, another option for you in winter, if you are ready to have everybody that you've given Lightning access to stay in Lightning full time, which we hope you're getting there, we now have a single checkbox you can do. So if you go into Lightning Experience and Setup, and you go to Setup Users, you'll have a new thing here that you can turn on. And you've always had the ability for a while now to apply the hide option to switch to Classic user perm to people. But if you're kind of done with that and you've got everybody on board, you can now just flip this on and it basically applies that globally. If you're not ready for it yet, don't use it obviously, and you can still use the user perm in the meantime. And so with that, Elna, I'm happy to take questions and we can talk about what you guys think so far.
Oh, wow, I love it myself. I mean, the list view search is amazing. And by the way, I did test it and you can still inline edit after you searched, because I know people are wondering that, a few people at least. And I'm wondering what other questions you might have. So Sam, why don't you let us know what's out there?
Well, I'm getting a lot of shout outs around the being able to go to the density settings and setting that. One person said, my optometrist thanks you. I thought that was awesome. Some great questions here. So I'm going to start with Jessica's. I love this question. On the collect feedback, when users switch to Classic, do you have to be using Chatter to be able to use that functionality?
You do. So if Chatter was turned off in your org, this wouldn't work. We have a check for that. But hopefully you have it on. It's on in most orgs that we see in production, and we think that's the most efficient way for you to engage.
And Carol, hello, Carol. Carol and I go way back. She's asking about the welcome mat because she loves it, and I know Carol has an amazing training program for her users. She wants to use a combination of a custom URL and also the Salesforce help that's embedded in that welcome mat. Can you do that?
That's a good question. Not yet, but I'll bring that feedback back to the product manager for the welcome mat. I didn't have a slide for it today, but kind of a sneak peek towards spring. We are also revamping the help menu, and we're trying to bring you admin customizable help so that you'll be able to go in and create your own section in the help menu and put your kind of global links that you want for your org in there if you have your own custom training that you've created. So long story short, we're trying to give you more options as admins to do this, whether it's in the welcome mat or it's in help, but the answer is it's coming.
And Stephen, he loves the new comfy and compact. He wants cozy too. So you're already getting people interested in that. Carol again is asking, if you're searching inside of a list view, how does the user know which of the 2,000 rows they are searching?
So that is controlled by the sort order of the list. So however you set that up, it'll search the first 2,000 of that result set.
Great. So thank you so much, Sam, for the questions. If we didn't get your question, keep them coming. We're going to keep following you in the community or in Twitter, wherever you posted your question, and we'll get back to you. But I think we now need to turn to Alex, who's going to talk about Flow and all the Flownatics. This is all for you.
Thank you very much. It's good to be talking about Flow here again. The Flow, Lightning Flow, as many of you know, is part of the overall Lightning platform. And one of its great strengths is its ability to provide functionality in a range both from no code, drag and point and click, to powerful enterprise integration. We've done a lot of things on on both ends of that spectrum this release, and let's dive into that. The first thing I'm going to show you, though, is the one thing that we're not actually shipping this release, but there's so much interest in our new Flow Builder that I couldn't resist giving a demonstration of what's available. So if we can turn to the demo, what you're seeing here on screen is our Flow Builder. We're very close to having it fully released. This is an actual flow, and you can see that if I pop into one of these screens, you can see all of the components are available on the right. Properties and configuration are available on the left. And one of the things that I can show you that I think will be very appreciated is I'm going to compare the time it takes to refresh this page to the time it takes to refresh this page using the old Cloudflow Designer with a single node. So let's refresh this one and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it took about 5 or 6 seconds. And now let's go and do the same thing over here in this more complex flow. And it's already done. How about that? Lightning Flow Builder, much faster, much higher performance. And so that's very exciting. Let's go back to the slides. And the next area that I want to talk to you about, where there's been tremendous innovation for Winter 19, is the area of Flow Actions. And that starts with the new Flow Solutions section of AppExchange. So there is now a dedicated place on AppExchange that you can go and find Flow Actions, Flow Solutions, and Flow Screen components. And I only have time to show you a few, but here's a list of the inaugural set of actions and components that are available at no charge to be installed today into Flow. These are all official. Everything on AppExchange goes through security review. And so let's take a look at a couple of these examples. First, I'm going to show you something simple but very powerful. For a long time, we wanted to make it easy to send an SMS message from inside of a flow. So I'm going to give you an example of that. And I'm going to go over here to this flow, and I'm going to run it. And I'm going to actually use our new debugger to run it. It's not so new anymore, but I still love showing that off. And if you heard that, that was the sound of an SMS message actually coming to my phone almost instantaneously. And if we look back at the flow itself, you can see the action right here. Here it is. And so when you install an action like that from AppExchange, it shows up right here on your flow palette. It can be dragged right in. You don't have to write code. In this case, we simply are passing in and the SMS number to send to. In some cases, there's a place in custom metadata that allows you to store a token to a web service. And that's an example. You can imagine different scenarios, but I want to give you a demonstration of how cool the things you can build are when you've got tools like send SMS message. So I'm going to show you a demonstration now. If we switch back to the slide, then let's take a look at how SMS can be integrated with chatbots. So chatbot technology, very powerful, new, released, and in Winter 19, you can use chatbots with flows, and you can have chatbots launch flows. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you over to Community Cloud, and we're in Community Cloud here, and I am looking, I'm a customer, I am using this financial portal, and I want to start a chat session. So I start my chat session here, and you might have seen us do this demo in the past. We've shown integration between Community Cloud and Service Cloud before, but we've never shown this. What you see right here on the screen is chatbot technology. So the first thing our customer wants to do is they want to set up a walk-in appointment. So they click on that, and that activates the chatbot. And the chatbot goes, you know what? I can deliver this without any additional identity confirmation. So I have the ability to simply pick my appointment. So far, so good. But let's say that I now want to ask the chatbot for an account balance. Now, the bank in this case wants to verify my identity. So what they've just done, you might have heard that, they've just sent me using a flow, they've sent me an SMS. On the screen it says, please enter the confirmation code. I can go right down here and see that it's 4362. I type that into my chatbot. The chatbot actually uses Flow again to verify that is the correct amount, and you can see right here the account balance is actually shown. And then if I want to talk to an agent, I also can do that because of integration between Community Cloud, Chat, and Service Console. I'm going to click Transfer to Agent. And you can hear that over in Service Cloud, an agent is able to pick that up and take that transition seamlessly from the chatbot experience to a live chat experience. And so what you really have there is so many different pieces of Salesforce technology coming together, and Flow and these individual little modest Flow components and actions allowing very powerful applications to be built without any code whatsoever. So let's go back to the slides. So we talked about this. We were able to confirm the identity. We were able to have a flow activated by chatbot. The chatbot didn't have to worry about any of the details of sending that SMS out. That was completely taken care of. And for that matter, Flow didn't have to worry about the details of sending that SMS out because we used Twilio technology and were able to install that with one click. Here's a look at how you might configure that. This is some of the chatbot interface, some of the setup. You can see how you can point a chatbot action at one of these flows, pass it information, and then take the response data that comes back from that flow and use it for further parts of your chatbot communication. So let's move on. Another new action. Chargent has brought Stripe integration. You can now process a credit card transaction in any Flow screen. You just drop it in, connect it up to your Stripe account, and you're ready to go. There are so many of these that are available and are increasingly being made available as companies like Chargent take advantage of this component framework and this ability to use Lightning platform technology to make these pieces of functionality available in Flow. I wanted to show you a quick demo of one that I particularly like. This is a video player made available on AppExchange now by Vidyard. Now, if I go into this example, let's see, I have that right here. So I have my player right here, and it's going to play an MP4. But we've used the power of Flow to make this a little more clever. It's actually going to keep track of how long I watch the video. So watch what happens when I only watch the video for a few seconds. I'm watching the video, and then I say, okay, I want to move on. And I think I need to refresh that. Let's do that real fast. So in this case, because I only watched it for a couple seconds, Flow has received that information from the video component. So the video player tracked how long I watched it, passed that information to Flow, and then I was able to make my Flow configured so that since I didn't watch it for 5 seconds, I got this essentially this message saying that I really need to go back and watch it again. So if I do that, and this time I'm going to let it run a little longer, and you can kind of imagine this could be useful in a training scenario. So now I give it a little more time. And enough videos watched, I can proceed down a different path of my flow. And so once again, that technology really available with simple drag and drop activity. So let's keep going. Now, we've talked about actions. I want to talk as well about more of the new screen components that will be available in Winter 19. If you watched in the summer, we were sharing some screen components that had been made available unofficially by the community. And what we did for Winter is we took some of the most popular of those screen components and we built them right in. So I'm going to now go and let's pull this up and show this demonstration. I've got an image with some flow, with some web HTML click events being handled. You may recall this from some previous demos, but let's take a look at what's going on first on this screen. Actually, I'll come back to that screen. I'm going to show you this one. So here, some of the features that you saw on the slide there, these are new components. I've got here an email component that's going to validate and make sure that I type in an actual email component. I've got a slider component here that I can set to a default value. I can set the minimum and maximum ranges. I've got a phone number here, and that's going to have validation as well. And in a few minutes, I'll talk a little more about some of the validation services that we're now making available to all components. And if we go back to the slide, you can see these three of which you've just seen, slider, email address, phone number, URL, all built into Flow as new screen components taking available of the platform. Let me talk about one that's a little more powerful. We're starting to deliver components that are designed to save you time. This is called simply the name form. And what it's designed to do is let you bring up a full name form inside of Flow without having to actually manually add all of the form fields individually. So if we go back to the demo, you can see, let me take this back here. This is what the name form looks like, and you can see that I've got 6 different fields here. I've got a drop down that's full of salutation, but if we go back to the slide, you can see that to configure that, I only needed to set 2 things in Flow. I didn't need to manage all of those individual fields. And there's more like this coming down the path to make it easy to do a lot of automatic creation of screens. The next one I'm going to show you is dependent pick list. We have had an unofficial version of dependent pick list, but we got some feedback from our Flow HANA that they wanted more. So we not only built it in, but we added some functionality to it. So if we go back to the demo, you can see up here I've got a manufacturer, and when I select one of the values of this controlling pick list, I get the appropriate dependent pick list. If I go here and I change it, I get a different set of values. So what's new? One of the things that's new, if you go back to the slide, is that we take advantage of all of your field dependencies. So if you're already creating field dependencies to control all of your different pick list relationships, that's now part of the control. We will automatically detect that field dependency and use it to set up the dependency relationship in the flow screen. And then the additional thing that I'm not actually showing you right here, is that we actually let you do 2 levels of dependency. So you can have a pick list that leads to a pick list, and then the selection there leads to a 3rd pick list, all set up with just a couple of changes. One of the areas of feedback we've gotten a lot of requests for is, I want more dynamics on my flow screen. I want to be able to make things show and hide, and I want to be able to progressively build. So we have a rich roadmap of how we intend to bring more and more functionality of that sort here. So let's keep going with the next slide. You may have noticed that we're working, as part of the Flow Builder, we're working on integrating these components in more effectively. Now, if we look down here at the demo, you can see that today it's not the easiest thing in the world to add components. You have to go up here. You have to go to this Lightning component. You have to pick from a pick list with some complicated namespace information, and then you have to do all of your configuring in these 2 columns. And I wanted to show you, you may have noticed this, but when I brought up the Flow Builder and pulled up the screen, you can see some of the improvements here in the left column. So we are integrating all of the components with the built-in original core elements. This is all going to get easier. We're working on a lot of improvements, not only to that usability, but to also making it easier to configure these components, because the components are getting more complex, and yet we want to make it much easier for you to tell a component what you want it to do when the flow runs. So we're only at the beginning. The Flow Builder that we're about to release is really only the start of a journey. Once we have our new Flow Builder platform, we have a rich roadmap of ease of use, adoption, and usability improvements that we intend to make going forward. All right, let's keep going. Go back to the slide. And I want to talk about something that we're very excited about. This is possibly the thing that has the Flow HANA talking the most, and that's, of course, the new toggle component. Now, a few crusty members of the Flow HANA have said, well, wait a second, isn't this just a checkbox? Isn't this just a glorified checkbox? And I'm here to tell you today that there really is so much more to the Flow toggle screen component than that. It's a state-of-the-art 2-position toggle, and it has dynamic tri-value label support. You can see up here on the screen that you not only have the label on the left, but you can have both an inactive value on the bottom and an active value on the bottom as well. That's not 1, that's not 2, that's tri. And in addition to that functionality, we're pleased to announce that the new Flow Screen Toggle component meets all pending FedRAMP and GDPR toggle standards. It's available in a rich blue color. And we've added that extra check mark. You can see it there on the right, because a few people were saying, hey, look, I know that you've got the color, I know that you've got the labels, but I'm still not confident that my user is going to know that that toggle is enabled. So we brought the checkbox and we brought that check mark back so that you can have what they refer to in the financial industry as true belt and suspenders confidence. You know how many points, Joe, that toggle is going to retire on AppExchange?
No, tell me.
27 million points.
27
million points. And that's all because of the power of Flow components. So let's keep moving on the slides.
I learned some new terms today on the slide. This is a great slide.
Yes, absolutely. The final thing I do want to remind you is that while the toggle component is available in all countries, it is subject to local toggle regulation. Okay, and with that, let's keep moving. And let me talk about a few component services in what time we have left. I mentioned validation. Those of you who are building components have asked, hey, I want to be sure that if my component doesn't have the right information, if I have a required field, but no one's filled in that field, I need to be a first-class citizen and make sure that the flow doesn't transition to the next screen. That functionality is now available in Winter 19, and several of the components that we're making available in Winter 19 take advantage of that out of the box. We also have added what we call flow memory for components. You may have noticed that if you add a component, fill in some values, move on to the next screen, and then later come back, that the component would have emptied out and reset itself. And we needed to provide a way that you could configure your flow to repopulate that value if you wanted to do that. So now, depending on whether you want the values to be remembered or whether you want the returning flow user to be able to start from scratch, you can have both ways. So we're continuing to invest in making components easier and more powerful to use in the flow environment. And with that, let's move on. A few brief mentions. We're very pleased to be able to extend to Community Cloud guest users the ability to run flows as well, because there's a lot of very interesting use cases that our Community Cloud Flow HANA members have been asking for, like self-registration and survey capability built right into the Community Cloud portal pages. That's now available. We've added some increases. We've made some substantial increases to limits. You can see them up here on the screen. We have dramatically increased the number of total processes and flows you can have. And also the number of active processes and flows you can have. And you get a separate quota for flows that run in Flow versus processes that run in Process Builder. And this is all part of our continued effort to improve scalability and make it possible to happily rely on Flow for your most intensive enterprise use cases. And then a few quick mentions at the end, some fairly technical stuff, but very beloved of some of our enterprise users and some of our ISVs and integrators. We've made a couple of improvements to Flow Deployability. We now play very nicely with version control and continuous integration systems. When you do metadata retrieves, we're not going to be appending old version numbers and new version numbers to those file names, so the file name doesn't change. Why is this beneficial? Well, it turns out that modern Git-based version control and continuous deployment systems really rely on file names. And so although the versioning that Flow has always had available was way ahead of its time, it was time to make it possible to really participate effectively with modern version control systems. And related to that, we're now providing a mode where you can have all of your flows deployed as active, so that when you do a package deployment using your continuous integration or your continuous deployment system, you don't have to go in subsequently and manually activate those flows. Some of the things that we've done here really are in part because we're so excited about the SFDX that John's about to talk about, and we wanted to make sure that Flow was a first-class citizen there. And so with that, I'm very pleased to take any questions you might have.
Wow, I'm practically speechless. That was a lot of great new features. And I have to say, chatbots and flows, the possibilities are nearly endless. And I'm sure that there's lots of ideas that churning out there right now. And you've convinced me that a toggle is in fact more rich than
absolutely.
A checkbox. So
Absolutely.
I'm converted now. So how about everybody else out there? Let's take maybe 2 quick questions, and any other questions, if we have time at the end, we'll get back to it after we hear from John.
There are a lot of questions and there are a lot of shout outs. I just want to say we have one of our main Flownatics out there, Brian Kwong. He is so excited about this stuff. Thank you very much, Brian, for those shout outs. There's a lot of questions, so I just want to emphasize that we're going to get back to them within the next 24 to 48 hours. First question, what other screen components are in the works for Flow?
Else is in the works for Flow? Great question. Some of the things you can look forward to in spring include a address component that makes it really easy to throw up a full address form that includes, if you wish, access to the new global, state, and country pick lists. We're adding a record form-based component. What that means is you can add this component, you simply tell Flow what object you want it to be, and then what fields you want it to display. So you do that, and that just takes a couple of lines of text. And then Flow takes advantage of the power of Lightning-based components and displays the entire form, and even provides a dialog pop-up that automatically will save that form for your user when they fill in that field. So that's one more step you don't have to worry about. Another big one is the lookup component. The lookup component, very beloved. There are some great unofficial versions that the community's made available, and we are very looking forward to taking all of that goodness and bringing it in as an official out-of-the-box component.
And I think this is an important question. Will Flow Builder be able to load all of my existing flows? I've seen that in a variety of different formats throughout the community. So I've been using Flow. Will I be able to use Flow Builder for those flows?
The answer is yes. We have built Flow Builder from the ground up to be fully compatible with all of the existing Flow metadata. So all existing flows should work just fine in Flow Builder.
All right, so let's go on to the Power Tools section and talk about DX. John, over to you.
All right, thanks. A lot of amazing stuff there, Alex. Really excited. Some of the things he talked about, especially at the end, we'll segue into some of the things that I want to mention about how we're doing some sort of community-driven prioritization. But it's really a lot of fantastic stuff, and hopefully I'll do DX justice after all of that. So one of the first things that I want to talk about for our upcoming release is org development. So we've done a lot around DX to talk about package development over our past several releases. And org development is sort of our classic development model through our sandboxes. There's, in a way, you could look at change sets as org development, but we also refer to org development in the way that our customers previously used Force IDE and the Ant migration tool to help do their development and migrate changes. So in our next release, we're happy to announce VS Code and CLI working over the new DX source to develop with sandboxes. So this means that you can now have a DX project that's built around this org development, sandbox development, so you can easily extract your diffs from a sandbox and move them to other environments, including your production org, all with our new DX source format. Along with that, we have been continuing to work on our release management tools with that new source format. So not only can you interact with sandboxes as a new source, but you can deploy right out of that as well. Sandbox cloning, which is in beta, is a really important aspect to org development and package development for that matter. So the sandbox cloning capability is going to give you, the user, the ability to set up an org for development and test just the way you like it. And you can keep that org around and then clone it for any admin user, any development user that you have. So they're always starting from the same point. So why is this really important? Well, if you're using a developer sandbox or a dev pro sandbox, which are metadata-only copies of your org, you can create that first sandbox environment, set it up with users and profiles that make sense for a development org, set it up with any integrations that you need, and then load test data into that environment. And now you have it set up. You can then clone that entire environment into another dev sandbox. So even though it's a metadata only, you are going to clone everything over, all the changes you've made, including data. So this is a really, really important productivity enhancement for all of our users. Now, on the package development side, we have some great updates for you. So unlock packages, which is something that we've been working on for a while. Unlock packages are the package solution for our customers, where managed package is a package solution for our ISVs. The unlock package is going to be GA as of our winter release. So all of our customers can take advantage of that and start to build their apps. And instead of deploying your application just through, say, the generic metadata deploy, you can now use a formal packaging mechanism to pull all of that information together, deploy that application to your production environment, and then you'll be able to see it, just like you'll be able to see an AppExchange app in your production org. You'll see your apps right next to them in a nice way to manage not only what's going on in your org, you'll be able to understand how your org is designed, and then you'll also be able to see how all of your metadata and customizations are organized within your org. So say, for instance, instead of going to setup today, and you see lists of things, I see lists of my Apex, or I see lists of my custom objects, I can start at the installed package area, and I can see the apps that are installed, and I can introspect those and see all the Apex, custom objects, custom metadata, page layouts that are specific to that application. So that's a really great feature. Also really into package development are Scratch org shape and Scratch org snapshots. So these are all productivity enhancements to make it easier for you to develop your unlock packages. Scratch org shape is going to give you the ability to extract the shape of your production org. That means the features, the preferences, the settings, the addition. This is the base template for what you want your Scratch org to look like. So instead of having to manually create that, we're going to give you the ability to easily extract that from your production environment. And then Scratch org snapshots. So let me differentiate this from sandbox clones really quickly. A sandbox clone is always an active environment that you have set up that someone can log into. A Scratch org snapshot, in a similar way, is going to give you a productivity enhancement where you can set up your Scratch org and then you can create a snapshot of it. The snapshot is a passive thing. It's not something that you have direct access to, but you can create another Scratch org from that snapshot. So this will be an important thing for continuous integration and continuous delivery, where you want to quickly spin up an org that's already set up to your needs. That's what the snapshots are going to do for you. And both of those are in pilot, and definitely talk to your account execs if you want to get involved in those. Now, on the administration side, and we're going to show you some of these things, modify metadata. So this is in beta. So one of the things that we have had our admins do today is they've always had to have access to everything in the org, but we wanted to provide more delegated permission. So if you only want to give a user access to just metadata for deployment use cases, for setup use cases in your production environments, you have that capability now without giving them full access to all of the data in the org. Custom metadata types and formula fields. Now this is something that I'm going to demonstrate. This is a really, really powerful tool to help you take business logic and start to incorporate it into more aspects of setup. So the custom metadata team has been doing a lot around this area. In fact, their roadmap is to have custom metadata types in Flow, I believe, coming up in the next couple of releases. But for this and for this demo, we'll see how custom metadata types work in formula fields. And last but not least here is our dependency API pilot. Now, there is a lot of buzz about this and what we could potentially do with this. Lots of different use cases. But the idea behind dependency API is simply to let you know how your metadata is related to other metadata. There's some idea exchange, asks for where is this field used. That is the tip of the iceberg for this thing. So we are working with the community, and we want to get all of your feedback on what we could potentially get into. Development experience updates. If you have a DE org, you will now be able to have a dev hub. This is going to give you access to Scratch orgs and all the capabilities around package development. We also have now created a REST API for metadata deploy. Say finally around that, we are supporting REST. It's amazing. We're going to be working on REST API for metadata retrieve as well. And if we switch over to the demo box real quick, I want to show the metadata coverage report. So this is a really important tool for us in our community. So we want to make it easier for you to understand how to develop. And we have lots of different metadata channels, from metadata API to source tracking, which drives our push and pull commands, unlock packaging, all the way through to change sets. And we want to let you know what metadata components work through these metadata channels. So you'll be able to easily see that through this metadata coverage report, which is now GA. But also important are the known issues here. We know that there are usability issues and gaps, as you can see, where we don't have checkboxes. If you are looking at this report, please contribute back to this. Please contribute to the known issues. This helps us prioritize things. This helps us work with the rest of the teams like Alex's, and we get these great improvements around dev experience and CI and CD. All right, and let's see, next slide. Now we'll get into our demonstration. Now to set this up, because I think we might be running out of time, to set this up, what we are doing today is we are a Sales Cloud customer, and we have a situation where our team wants to update the maximum discounts for our most very important customers. So if you see this account here, we have a total opportunity amount of $2 million and a maximum discount of 10%. So our business leaders are telling us, okay, we need to update these maximum discounts for our most important customers, that's anyone with an opportunity amount over $1 million, to 20%. We are really going to help them out. Now, me as an admin, I'm saying to myself, okay, this is great. I can update this. How do I have this set up? All right, well, if I look into my account object and I go to my maximum discount field, you'll notice that I have a formula field set up right down here at the bottom, and this is hard-coded in. And I'm saying to myself right now, you know what, this is the 5th time this month that someone has asked me to update this. And not only are these discounts used here, but they're used in several other fields. So I need a better way of managing these discounts. So how can I do that? Well, we're going to do that with custom metadata. And I'm going to show you how to do that through our DX tools in VS Code and CLI. Now, before I get started and I want to know a little bit more about this field, and before I make changes to it, if I'm smart, what am I doing here? I want to know where this field is used. Well, that is where I'm happy to say we do have something in pilot. Where is this used button on our fields? So you can actually click on this and start to better understand, as you're about to make changes in your org, what will be impacted if you make that change. So you'll notice a set of layouts here, and I say, okay, this is good. I understand what I'm getting into. Now I'm going to go off and I'm going to start building out. Now I got to set up my project before I start. So what am I going to do? I need some sandbox orgs to work with. So if I go into sandboxes, you'll see that I have a set of orgs already created here. And you'll see right here, I have one called Dev Starter. Now this is the sandbox that I configured with the correct dev users already. I've got data in there. This is ready to go. I'm not going to touch this environment, but this is the environment that I'm going to clone from. So if you notice down here, there's one I called Project Discount, and it's copied from Dev Starter. So this is a clone I've already created. Now if I want to clone again, it's simply click the clone button off of Dev Starter, and I'll call this my test environment. And you can see it's create from Dev Starter, and it's a developer sandbox. I'll go ahead and get that going, and you can see that this is going to start to create in the background. So now that I have a dev sandbox ready for me, now I need to also create a project. So I talked about how we can now do org development and sandbox development within VS Code. So the way to start that is Command-Shift-P. There is a new command called Create Project with Manifest. And the manifest file is going to help you define what is in your project and what you're moving back and forth between that sandbox org. Now I've already created my Release Readiness Live project right here. And you can see this particular manifest that I'm going to be working on, and I've already pre-created this, is for my custom object, my custom metadata, and the custom field all around updating this discount. So I've got this created. That's great. So my whole project, I'm ready to go. And now I'll hop over into my sandbox, and you can see that by the banner here that I'm in the project discount sandbox. And the first thing I need to do is show you how to set up that custom metadata. So in custom metadata types, I've already created something called discount policy. And the important thing to know here is that we are tracking the max discount for any customer based on an opportunity amount. So max discount and opportunity amount. And if I go back, whoops, too far. I'll show you some of the records that we've all created. So for a default, for any of our customers, we have a default record which shows a 10% discount for any opportunity amount. And then our VIP customers, if you have an opportunity amount of over $1 million, we're going to give you a max discount of 20%. So I've created that metadata, that custom metadata type. Now, how do I get that working with the custom field? I go into account fields, let's see, maximum discount. I'm going to edit. And then right down here, the first thing I'm going to do is highlight the opportunity amount. And I'm going to say insert field, custom metadata, choose the discount policy for VIPs, and choose that opportunity amount. And I'm going to do the same thing for these discount percentages. So choose max discount, and then also choose the default discount. All right, so now that I have that saved, I finished some of my dev work. Now that's fantastic. Now, how do I pull that down so I can check this into source control or work with a project? I simply go over to VS Code. I can right click on that manifest that I've created and say retrieve source from org. And that's going to make a call in the background to go and pull down those changes that we just made. Now, conversely, while this is running, conversely, if I am used to working in VS Code, and let's say I actually want to go through and update that discount, I can simply go in here and I'm going to say, we're going to really help them out. And we're going to go to 30%. I can then quickly save that up into my org by saying deploy source to org. And that's all there is to it there. Now, the last step here is getting this into our production environment. So we also have these capabilities through our CLI, and you can simply go into that same project, select your production org based on this user alias I have here, and we can deploy that as our release management solution up to our production org. And that is complete. If I go back to the prod org now and refresh, we should see a new discount on this account, if I did this right. Voila, 30%. Excellent. So that shows you the full flow back to your production org using org development. And one last thing just to say around managing this custom metadata. If someone asks me again, if they ask me again, I got to update this discount, all I need to do is come back into custom metadata types, and I can simply manage the record, go into VIP discount, and modify this here. Let's be honest, they don't need that much help, so we're just going to go to 15%. And save that right there, and that's an easy administration change right there, and it'll go to all the formula fields that utilize that capability, and that didn't update. So maybe I updated the wrong one. Well, that's the end of my demo. Any questions?
Oh, I'm sure there are questions. I've got to say, I love the shape, the org shape, the concept of that.
Okay.
And I love the word, and seems like a great time saver as well. And then, would you say a Scratch org snapshot is kind of like a template for a Scratch org?
Think of it as a template or an image. We're in pilot phase right now, so we are open to suggestions around names so it resonates. But the idea is, it's sort of like we're creating a copy of that thing and storing it on the side for you passively, and then whenever you want to spin that thing back up, you have it available to you.
The where is this used button, that one stood out for me, because that one, now I wanted to know, is that one available for all admins just on a regular field definition, or do you need to have DX install or anything else?
It's not specific to the DX development process. This is an admin feature, and especially the dependency API. We're planning to use it like that. We want to give all of our product teams opportunities to build around that. I know there's been questions around, can we add that into reports? Like I said, I think it's just the tip of the iceberg with this. I think there's a lot of interesting things that we'll be able to do with the dependency API.
Wow, cool. Thank you so much. So Sam, what questions do we have out there for John?
Well, I think there's a lot of questions related to Scratch orgs and the new clone functionality. So I'm going to start there. So when would you use a Scratch org? When would you use the clone functionality? Let's start there.
Okay, so sandboxes and Scratch orgs, we get these questions a lot, when to use one or the other. Scratch orgs were primarily created for package development. Now, the reason for that is a package is a self-contained entity where all of the metadata is there. All the metadata that you need is there within the package. And the Scratch org is an empty org. It's meant to be driven from source and a complete set of source. So we designed the Scratch org to be used for package development. That's its primary use case. Now, sandboxes have a bit more flexibility. Sandboxes, where I said we use that for org development. This is the case where, let's say you're not building a package, you're just working on an org, you want to develop a few changes and start to move diffs around. That's where sandboxes should be used, and that's where you should take advantage of the features around the sandbox. Now, that's just in the development phase. If you start to move towards test and release management, sandboxes are the perfect environment for UAT, performance, and staging. You'll always go back to that environment, because even if you're using a Scratch org to develop and test sort of that module or that part of your org, you still want to, before you promote that thing to a production org, you want to test it in something that is truly a replica of the entire production environment, and that's a sandbox.
All right, so I want to build on that with Jessica's question. So she's wanting to understand, when you're cloning a sandbox, she's asking, does that imply that current dev sandboxes are inefficient for testing record access changes, things like that? And I'm tempted to say no. The cloning functionality means that you can clone to another environment, including all of the data, but it doesn't mean what you're doing today isn't going to continue to work.
Right. It's a productivity enhancement around it. So the metadata only copy sandbox, the dev sandbox, is a copy of your prod org. So every time you do a create and refresh, it's going to pull from what you have in production. But that doesn't fit your use case, because every time you refresh, you need to set everything back up again. This is security profiles, this is test data, and sometimes you need to load it with some of the data that you're building. So it's important with this that you have this capability of really providing a productivity enhancement. So the cloning capability is based on this idea of setting up an org, getting that org set up for either all of your development use cases or test use cases, so you don't have to repeat that work that you would have to repeat if you just created another sandbox or refreshed a sandbox.
I remember the old days of having CSV files already prepared to dump into a sandbox so that you could do that kind of testing. I could do this one time now and clone that.
That's right. That's right.
So hopefully, Jessica, that added some clarity for you. Wade is asking a great question, and I know that many admins have this. What's your advice on when you're dealing with different releases and your environments? So production's on one release, you've got sandboxes on another release, you've now got this clone capability, you've got scratch orgs. How do you manage that so that you can continue through your development cycle?
Well, we are going to be working on providing a bit more flexibility on that. So Safe Harbor, we've been trying to work on selections around preview so you have more control over setting up your environments for that matter. Now, we have always set up the sandbox preview, so it's a situation where we are actively wanting customers to start testing on the new environment so they understand potentially what they're getting into before the release. So I would say the best thing you can do is to keep track of our preview windows, and then try to have an array of orgs set up for that. So you can have your environments. If you're planning a release, I'd say you want to look at our production releases and try to plan honestly around those windows. I think if you're trying to manage your risk around our release, I think you want to make sure we go through our release, everything is stabilized there, and then you can start working through your own releases to your production org. So I would say work with our release flow and try to prepare for that along with us, and then work on your deployments a bit around that. That to me is the best way of managing that.
So Elna, I'm going to ask you a question because this is really important. Where is the best place for you to go to understand what's happening for the releases for your org and also for your sandboxes?
Good question. So anything about releases, the Times Square of release readiness, of course, is the Release Readiness Trailblazers group in the community. And we do, a lot of us are there to try to make sure you have all the resources hot off the press. And we always post about the sandbox preview when it's coming up, so you know when to refresh or not refresh, depending on where your sandboxes happen to be sitting. And I'm actually curious about if you were to clone a sandbox, would the same rules apply? Like if, let's say we've already entered the pre-preview phase where you would have to, if you have a sandbox that's on a non-preview instance and you would need to refresh it to get it on a preview, if you happen to clone a sandbox during that period, would it then go on a preview instance automatically? Can you choose, or how would that work?
Right. The selection is not there at this point. So when you go through a release, sandbox creations, refreshes, clones, even scratch org creations are targeted at preview environments. And then once we hit our preview window, we switch everything. So creations, refreshes, creates in general will go to the sandboxes that are stagger environments that are lagging behind and are upgraded at the end of our release phase R2. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. So we have just a few minutes left, so maybe we can take a couple more questions from the Flow folks.
Yeah,
Flow
I have
Hana.
one here that I really want to get to. This is a great question. So this is for James. He's asking this for everybody. What is the best way for an intermediate level admin to really dive in and be properly trained on Flow to become a Flownatic, to be well versed, and especially if they're not a developer, how do they get started? What do you recommend?
That's a great question. The first answer to a question like that is always, of course, the trailheads. We've got some basic, starting from nothing, here's how you can learn. We actually start off talking about the different workflow automation tools that you can choose from. There's Flow, there's Process Builder, and there's a couple others. And then we provide tutorials and guidance on the trailhead to take you up to speed. Now there's a new developer page as well that is available on Salesforce.com in the developer section where all the Flow related material is combined. And that's a great resource. There's a couple of books that have been written by some of the more advanced members of the Flow HANA. So you can go to an online bookstore and search for Salesforce Flow, and you'll find some good resources there. There's also a couple of great blog posts, blogs by some of our Flow HANA members, and you can find information about those in a variety of places, including our Trailblazer community for workplace automation. Workflow automation, sorry. So a lot of different tools, and if you don't find exactly what you're looking for, just ask a couple questions online, because the Flow HANA community is very eager to help newcomers learn how to take advantage of all of this great tech.
So did I hear the name of that group right? The community group, Workflow Automation?
Yes.
All right, so that's where I would go, and they can help direct you to the right trailhead units to take and get you started. There's a lot of other questions here, but Elna, I think we're at time, so we're going to get to your questions. Remember, no question is left behind.
All right. Thank you so much for all your questions and all the conversations that we're having in the community. And thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you enjoyed it as much as we did. This has been recorded just as a reminder, so you can watch it back anytime and also share it with others. And we do love your feedback, so please do fill out the survey, which should be linked on the bottom of the screen. Just do that before you leave and go on to your next thing for today. And also join us again tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. Pacific, where we're going to be going through some great new features in Service Cloud. And I know lots of you will be looking forward to that as well. Now, I can't wait to hear how you are innovating with some of these new features, especially some of the amazing possibilities that were shared today. So let's keep the conversation going, especially in the release readiness group in the community. And we will all be there to help you be release ready.